there is a statistic that has come out of the UNAIDS, which is that over the next, now to 2030, 400,000 people will die of HIV stigma-related causes. So not of HIV itself, not of illnesses related to HIV, but as a consequence of the criminalization that exists because of HIV, as a direct consequence of all the things that stigma can do. HIV in View is a campaign to address the myths that exist around HIV, to relieve the stigma that is associated with HIV, and to improve people's understanding of HIV as it is now. And in the spirit of this, we're going to be talking about partnerships. Hi, Axel and Inad. Thank you very much for joining me today. And can you share some examples of how partnerships have been able to address issues related to HIV stigma?
Me, in my case, for example, working in some civil society organizations, or sometimes as an independent consultant or as an activist, doing some partnerships have helped me and have helped others to amplify our voices, to reach more people, to reach our target populations, and to sometimes, not always, but sometimes to actually bring the information and our perspectives, our backgrounds to those who actually need to know more about it,
One of good examples, I think, is when medical professionals and people living with HIV work together to identify which sector or which population are we targeting. What do they want to hear? Mm-hmm. How do you feel when you go to our clinic, when you get tested? How do you want to change that? Those kinds of dialogue is a kind of fair and equitable partnership. And another example is this space. This is a good example of a platform where we are given not only the voice, but also the space to air out our concerns and also our wishes on how to move forward on HIV, on battling HIV stigma.
I mean, that is so important, what you have just said. I mean, this is the reason for doing this, because yes, ViiV Healthcare is a big pharmaceutical company, but we exist for people living with HIV, and it's crucial that we hear the voices of the diversity of people living with HIV. In your view, what sorts of partnerships in the HIV space have been the most beneficial?
I think it's the fair and equitable partnership. When I say equitable, everyone has a say on the table, but not everyone is expected to bring the same amount of contributions to the table. But it's working together based on capacity, based on experience, and based on the value of such particular individual or stakeholder in that group of people working together.
So we need to have more partnerships that can actually help us to make dialogues and open dialogues, conversations with the government, with authorities, and that they should understand that,
Are there any voices that you think are missing? Who should be in these conversations but isn't?
Well, I think, again, it also depends on every country's context. Like, for example, in some countries where homosexuality is illegal and criminalized, I think we need to have the voices of organizations that work with queer people.
Yeah.
Well, like, for example, in other countries where, for example, we are not hearing the voices of women, we need to have more women organizations in that discussion.
We have been addressing HIV in silo for the longest time. HIV is a bigger societal issue. And I think when we look at that on a bigger perspective, we can identify who is actually missing in these discussions. People living with HIV has been discriminated since I can remember. And those sectors who are actually discriminating people living with HIV are not even present in the discussions. For example, the labor sector. How are we engaging the labor sector to ensure that people living with HIV employed in a particular company have the rights and benefits that they deserve or that they are entitled to? And just for the social security and social benefits, the very basic housing, livelihood, we should look at the person living with HIV beyond the virus, but also as a functioning citizen of a particular nation. And I think with that, we are not just only addressing HIV, we are also making sure that we are providing the quality of life for people living with HIV.
So, over the next decade, the next 10 years, what progress would you like to see in the field of HIV?
I would like to live in a society where discrimination and xenophobia are actually eradicated, because we can have the cure, but I believe the stigma is still gonna be there, you know?
And I suppose that is the reason for, or part of the reason for this HIV in View campaign, to raise awareness of HIV, to try to get over this issue of stigma, much of which comes from the lack of understanding that people have about HIV. So busting these myths hopefully will help with that. And so I think you're right. I think if there is a way for society to understand how harmful stigma is and to consciously not stigmatize people living with HIV, I think that will be a huge, huge win.
Thank you.